My name is Geneva, and I'm 71 years old. From my terrace overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, I often smile at how dramatically life can change. My $200 million Monaco mansion feels like freedom after years of feeling unwelcome in my own home. When my son said, "Find your own place," I never imagined it would lead here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button. Sometimes, the most painful words come from those we love the most. I spent 35 years as a widow raising my son Arthur single-handedly in our Boston home. The red brick colonial on Marlborough Street wasn't just a house. It was where Arthur took his first steps, where we celebrated countless Christmas mornings, where we healed after losing my husband Thomas to cancer when Arthur was just 4 years old. Most importantly, it was paid off entirely the deed in my name alone. Arthur was such a sweet boy growing up. He had his father's sandy brown hair and my green eyes. Every teacher praised his polite manners and thoughtful nature. We were a team, just the two of us against the world. I worked my way up from accounting assistant to senior financial manager at Wellington Investment Group, somehow balancing long hours with hockey practices, school plays, and maintaining our home. "Mom, you're my hero," Arthur once told me on his high school graduation day. I kept that memory close during the difficult times that would follow. By the time I retired at 66, I had a comfortable pension, substantial savings, and a portfolio I'd carefully managed. I had plans to travel, join a book club, and finally renovate the kitchen with the marble countertops I'd always wanted. That's when Arthur, 39 by then, approached me with what seemed like a reasonable request. He and his wife Lauren were saving for their dream home in Brookline, but needed to build up a bigger down payment. "Mom, would it be okay if we moved in for just a year or two?" Arthur asked over Sunday dinner. "We'd contribute to the bills, of course." Lauren nodded enthusiastically. "It would mean so much to us, Geneva. We promise not to be a burden." At first, it worked beautifully. I enjoyed the company after years of living alone. Lauren prepared dinner on Wednesdays and Fridays. Arthur handled yard work I'd been struggling with. We watched movies together on weekend evenings. I felt like I had a family again. The first signs of trouble appeared so gradually, I barely noticed. Lauren began rearranging furniture while I was out at my weekly bridge game with friends. "I hope you don't mind," she said when I questioned the new layout. "The flow is so much better this way." Then came the comments about my cooking. "Do you always use so much garlic?" Lauren asked, wrinkling her nose at my spaghetti bolognese, Arthur's favorite childhood meal. 1 year turned into 2, then 3, then 5. Their dream home plans seemed to fade into the background. Arthur's personality shifted subtly. He became more critical of me, often siding with Lauren during minor disagreements. For my 71st birthday, I wanted a small celebration at home with my closest friends. Lauren insisted on handling all the arrangements. "Don't worry about a thing, Geneva," she said. "I'll make it special." When the day arrived, I discovered she'd invited mostly her friends and coworkers. My best friend Dorothy was relegated to a corner table while Lauren's mother dominated conversations. The cake was carrot. Lauren's favorite, not my preferred, chocolate. As I blew out the candles, I caught Arthur and Lauren exchanging glances that made me feel like a stranger in my own celebration. "Happy birthday, Mom," Arthur said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Here's to many more, wherever life takes you." Something about his toast felt ominous, a harbinger of the painful conversation that would come just 3 months later. The feeling of being an unwelcome guest in my own home intensified over the following weeks. I'd returned from grocery shopping to find my carefully organized kitchen cupboards completely rearranged. The antique reading lamp that had belonged to my mother disappeared from the living room, replaced by a modern floor lamp Lauren had ordered online. "It's much more contemporary," she explained when I asked about it. "Your old lamp was gathering dust in the attic. This brightens up the whole room." I didn't have the heart to tell her that lamp was one of my few remaining connections to my childhood home. Arthur began commenting on my daily habits. "Mom, could you turn down the TV? Lauren's trying to work from home." Or, "Do you really need to get up at 6 a.m.? The floorboards creak and wake us up." Or, "The smell of your morning bacon lingers all day." Each criticism felt like a small paper cut, minor on its own, but painful as they accumulated. One afternoon, I met Dorothy for coffee at our favorite bakery. After listening to me describe the situation, she set down her cup firmly. "Geneva, they're pushing you out," she said bluntly. "Inch by inch, they're taking over your home and making you feel unwelcome. You need to stand your ground." I dismissed her concerns. "Arthur would never do that. He's just adjusting to married life." "It's not just Arthur," Dorothy warned. "This Lauren girl has plans, mark my words." I tried to accommodate my son and daughter-in-law. I started watching television with headphones. I prepared my breakfast after they woke up. I even began eating dinner in my room some evenings to give them space. The incident with the photo albums broke my heart. I'd kept meticulous family albums documenting Arthur's entire life. Baby footprints, first day of school photos, sports trophies, graduation. They'd always been stored in the built-in bookshelves in the living room. One Saturday, I came home from my weekly hair appointment to find them gone. "Where are the family albums?" I asked, trying to keep panic from my voice. Lauren looked up from her laptop. "Oh, we cleared some space for the new sound system. Those old albums were collecting dust." My heart raced. "But where are they now?" "We packed most of them away," Arthur replied, not meeting my eyes. "But a few were water damage from that leak last year, so we had to toss them." The water-damaged albums included all of Arthur's baby photos and our family vacation pictures from his childhood. I later found some torn pages in the recycling bin, images of Arthur's father among them. When I confronted them, Lauren dismissed it as an honest mistake. The first explicit mention of rearranging living arrangements came during a Thursday dinner. Arthur cleared his throat after dessert. "Mom, Lauren and I have been talking about the house," he began. "It's pretty big for just the three of us. We might want to think about using the spaces more efficiently." "What do you mean?" I asked, though I sensed what was coming. "Well, your bedroom is the largest," Lauren interjected. "And you're just one person while we're a couple who might want to expand our family someday." The implication hung in the air. They wanted my master bedroom, the one I'd shared with Thomas, where I'd nursed Arthur through childhood fevers, the room with the perfect morning light that helped me greet each day. Before I could respond, Lauren announced, "We're thinking of starting a family soon. This house has plenty of room for a baby, but we'd need to make some changes." Looking back, I should have recognized this moment as the beginning of the end. The pregnancy announcement came during Sunday brunch. Lauren beamed as she told me I would be a grandmother by Christmas. Under different circumstances, this would have been joyous news. Instead, it felt like another step in their campaign to claim my home. "We'll need to convert the small office into a nursery," Arthur explained. "And we've been thinking, wouldn't the sunroom make a perfect bedroom for you, Mom? It's cozy, and you'd have the garden view you've always loved." The sunroom was less than half the size of my bedroom, had no attached bathroom, and was freezing in winter. But I smiled weakly and congratulated them on the baby. As Lauren's pregnancy progressed, my role in the household diminished further. I doubled my contributions to groceries and utilities, hoping to demonstrate my value. I prepared elaborate dinners, cleaned obsessively, and offered to handle all laundry. Nothing stemmed the tide of subtle suggestions that I was in the way. One evening, I overheard Arthur on the phone in his study. The door was ajar, and his words froze me in place. "The Autumn Pines retirement community looks really nice, actually," he was saying. "They have independent living apartments, but also assisted living if needed down the road." "Yeah, I think it would be perfect for Mom." He was researching retirement homes without ever discussing it with me. The betrayal cut deep. Worse was the phone conversation I accidentally intercepted when Lauren thought I'd left for my book club. I'd forgotten my reading glasses and returned to find her speaking animatedly to someone. "It's becoming impossible, Mom. Lauren was saying. The old lady hovers constantly. It's like she's watching every move we make. No, we can't just ask her to leave. It's technically her house. Arthur's working on a solution. Once the baby comes, she'll have to understand we need our space. I was the old lady now. Not Geneva, not Arthur's mother, not the homeowner. Just an inconvenient elderly person disrupting their plans. When they began discussing nursery designs, I offered some suggestions based on Arthur's own nursery years ago. We're going for a more modern aesthetic, Lauren cut me off. No offense, but baby stuff from the 80s isn't exactly Pinterest-worthy. I was excluded from doctor appointments, baby shower planning, and even routine decisions about household matters. When I bought a beautiful handcrafted wooden rocking chair as an early gift for the nursery, it mysteriously ended up in the garage. We already ordered a glider that matches the nursery theme, Lauren explained. The final straw came when I discovered Arthur and Lauren had invited a real estate agent to walk through the house while I was at my dental appointment. Just exploring options, Arthur said vaguely when I questioned him. Property values in this neighborhood have skyrocketed. That night, I heard them discussing whether my house would sell better with or without renovations. They never once acknowledged that they were plotting to sell a home that wasn't theirs to sell. Once we list it, we could afford that new construction in Brookline, Lauren said excitedly. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and no outdated plumbing or wiring to deal with. And no mom, Arthur added in a lower voice, though not low enough. I went to bed that night with tears streaming down my face, finally accepting what Dorothy had warned me about years earlier. My son wanted me gone from my own home. On a crisp October evening, Arthur announced they wanted to have an important family dinner the following night. Something in his tone told me this would be the conversation I'd been dreading. I spent the day steeling myself rehearsing responses to whatever might come. Lauren prepared her signature roast chicken with rosemary potatoes, the meal she made when she wanted something from me. The dining room table was set with my grandmother's china, and Arthur had opened a bottle of expensive Cabernet. The stage was perfectly set for their performance. After dessert, Arthur cleared his throat and reached for Lauren's hand. Mom, we need to talk about something important. I nodded, my heart pounding so loudly I wondered if they could hear it. Lauren and I have been thinking about our future, especially with the baby coming, he continued. This house, well, it's not really designed for a modern family with children. Lauren jumped in. The stairs are steep, the bathroom fixtures are outdated, and the kitchen needs a complete overhaul. What we're trying to say, Arthur said, his voice taking on a rehearsed quality, is that we think it's time for you to find your own place. You've lived here for 52 years. Don't you think it's time for a change? The words hit me like a physical blow. I struggled to breathe as he continued. There are some wonderful senior communities nearby. You'd have friends your own age, activities, people to look after you if you need help. Look after me. I finally found my voice. I don't need looking after Arthur. I'm perfectly capable of caring for myself. Of course you are, Geneva, Lauren said with fake sympathy. But wouldn't it be nice not to worry about home maintenance, to have everything taken care of for you? This is my home, I said, my voice quivering. I paid off the mortgage 20 years ago. Your father and I bought this house before you were born. Arthur shifted uncomfortably. We know that, Mom, but you're getting older, and this place is too big for just one person. We need the space for our family. Your family, I repeated, the pain turning to anger. I am your family, Arthur. I raised you by myself after your father died. I worked 60-hour weeks to keep this roof over your head and food on the table. That was a long time ago, he dismissed. Things change. Families evolve. We're not saying you need to leave immediately, Lauren added, as if offering a generous concession. But we'd like to start looking at options soon, ideally before the baby arrives in 3 months. I looked at my son. The boy I'd rocked through colic, taught to ride a bicycle, helped through calculus homework, supported through college. Now he was telling me to leave my own home for his convenience. The thing is, Arthur continued, avoiding my gaze, we've already started looking at listings in Brookline. If we sell this place, we could afford our dream home. The market's hot right now. Sell. This is my house, Arthur. My name is on the deed. For a moment, he looked embarrassed. We thought maybe you could sign it over to us, as a gift. You've always said you wanted to help us establish ourselves. The audacity left me speechless. They weren't just asking me to move out. They expected me to hand over my most valuable asset. It would really be best for everyone, Lauren pressed. You could use some of the money for a nice senior apartment. I stood up, my legs shaking. I need some time to think about this. Of course, Arthur said, relief evident in his voice. Take all the time you need. We just wanted to start the conversation. I walked slowly to my bedroom, closed the door, and finally allowed the tears to fall. For hours I sobbed into my pillow, feeling betrayed by the person I loved most in the world. The child I had sacrificed everything for now saw me as an inconvenience, an obstacle to his plans. As midnight approached, something shifted inside me. The tears dried up, replaced by a cold clarity. I sat up in bed and whispered to the darkness, I will not be discarded like an unwanted piece of furniture. Not by my own son. Not from my own home. That night, as Arthur and Lauren slept peacefully, believing they had set their plan in motion, I began formulating one of my own. The next morning, I wiped away the last of my tears and pulled out my financial records. As a former financial manager, I'd always kept meticulous documentation of my assets. What Arthur and Lauren didn't know, what I'd never felt the need to flaunt, was just how successful my career and investments had been. Beyond my pension, I had a substantial investment portfolio that had grown steadily over decades. Blue-chip stocks purchased in the 80s, tech investments from the 90s, and a diverse range of mutual funds and bonds had compounded into a significant fortune. My late husband's life insurance policy, wisely invested, had multiplied several times over. I called my longtime attorney, Howard Goldstein, and scheduled an urgent appointment. Someone trying to pull a fast one on you, Geneva? Howard asked when I explained the situation. My own son, I replied, still struggling to believe it. Howard's face darkened. Unfortunately, I see this more often than you'd think. Adult children assuming they're entitled to their parents' assets. What can I do to help? First, I need to know exactly where I stand legally with my house. Howard confirmed what I already knew. The house was entirely mine. Arthur had no legal claim to it whatsoever. Next, I contacted Marianne Blackwell, a high-end real estate agent I'd known for years through mutual friends. Geneva. What a lovely surprise, she greeted me. Are you finally ready to downsize from that beautiful Marlborough Street home? Actually, Marianne, I'm interested in selling, but not to downsize. I'm looking to upgrade, significantly. And I'd like to know what my current property might be worth in today's market. Marianne's estimate nearly made me drop the phone. Boston's real estate market had exploded over the decades. The home Thomas and I had purchased for $60,000 in 1970 was now worth nearly $4 million. And one more thing, I added. I'd like this handled with the utmost discretion. No yard signs, no open houses, and absolutely no discussion with my son or daughter-in-law who currently live with me. That afternoon, while Arthur was at work and Lauren at a prenatal appointment, I began researching Monaco. I'd always been fascinated by the tiny principality, its tax advantages, Mediterranean climate, and sophisticated lifestyle. As a finance professional, I'd had clients who lived there, and I'd visited once on business years ago. Through some former professional connections, I reached out to a luxury real estate firm in Monte Carlo. Within days, they had sent me details of several exquisite properties, including a stunning Belle Epoque villa overlooking the harbor. The price tag of $200 million would have seemed impossible just days earlier. Now, combining my investments, retirement funds, and the proceeds from my Boston home, it was within reach. Meanwhile, at home, I maintained a facade of considering Arthur and Lauren's suggestion. I asked questions about retirement communities and pretended to browse brochures while secretly making arrangements that would change all our lives. "Have you thought more about what we discussed?" Arthur asked one evening, trying to sound casual. "I'm exploring options," I replied truthfully, though not the options he imagined. Lauren became increasingly bold, measuring my bedroom for new furniture and discussing color schemes with her interior designer friend while I was supposedly out of earshot. I met Dorothy for lunch and finally shared my plan. "Good for you, Geneva," she exclaimed, raising her wine glass. "It's about time you stood up for yourself." "Am I being too harsh?" I questioned. "He is my only child." Dorothy shook her head firmly. "He stopped acting like your child the moment he tried to push you out of your own home. Actions have consequences, and it's time Arthur learned that lesson." 2 weeks later, I received an offer on my house from a lovely couple, both surgeons at Massachusetts General Hospital. They had 2 young children and fell in love with the home's character and history. Their offer was $500,000 above asking price, with a request for a quick closing. That same day, I finalized the purchase of Villa Azur in Monaco. The previous owner, a Russian businessman relocating to Switzerland, was eager to close quickly. Everything was falling perfectly into place. As I signed the final papers for my Monaco property, I felt a surge of something I hadn't experienced in years. Power, independence, and the sweet anticipation of justice about to be served. I decided to mirror Arthur and Lauren's approach by planning a special family dinner of my own. I prepared all of Arthur's childhood favorites: pot roast with carrots and potatoes, homemade rolls, and apple pie for dessert. I even used the good china and crystal wine glasses. "What's the occasion?" Lauren asked suspiciously as she sat down. "I just wanted to have a nice meal together," I replied with a smile. "And to discuss my decision about our living situation." Arthur perked up, exchanging a quick glance with Lauren. "You've made a decision already. That's great, Mom. What are you thinking?" "Well, I said serving the pot roast. I've given it a lot of thought, and you two are right. It is time for a change." The relief on their faces was almost comical. Lauren actually reached over to squeeze Arthur's hand in celebration. "I'm so glad you understand, Geneva," Lauren said. "We found some lovely brochures for Sunshine Meadows. They have weekly bridge games and a beautiful garden." "That sounds nice," I replied, "but I've decided on a different direction." Arthur frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" I took a sip of wine, savoring the moment. "I've decided to move to Monaco." Silence fell over the table. Arthur choked slightly on his drink. "Monaco, like the country, by France," he finally managed. "Yes, that Monaco. I've always loved the Mediterranean, and the climate will be wonderful for my arthritis." But that's thousands of miles away," Arthur sputtered. "What about the baby, your grandchild?" "Modern technology is wonderful," I replied calmly. "We can video chat regularly. You can bring the family to visit. The guest rooms at my new villa are quite spacious." Lauren's expression darkened. "Villa Geneva, be realistic. How could you possibly afford a villa in Monaco? That's where billionaires and royalty live." "I've done quite well with my investments over the years," I said simply. "And speaking of real estate, I should mention that I've sold this house." The bomb had been dropped. Arthur's face drained of color. "You what?" "Sold the house. The new owners are a lovely couple with 2 children. The closing is in 3 weeks and they'll take possession 30 days after that." "You can't do that," Lauren nearly shouted. "We live here. What about our plans?" "Well, as you both reminded me recently, it's my house. And since you thought it was time for me to find a new place, I assumed you'd be making your own arrangements as well." "But our baby, we were counting on—" Lauren was near tears now, but not the manipulative ones I'd seen before. These were tears of genuine panic. 3 weeks to close, then 30 days to vacate, I repeated calmly. That gives you almost 2 months to find a new place. That's quite generous in today's rental market. Arthur was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Mom, you can't be serious. Where are we supposed to go? That's not my concern, Arthur. As you said, families evolve. Things change. I used his own dismissive words against him. But we can't afford Boston prices right now. We were counting on staying here until we could save enough for a down payment. Perhaps you should have thought of that before trying to push me out of my own home, I replied, my voice finally revealing a hint of the hurt I'd carried. You wanted me gone so badly, Arthur. Well, you got your wish. I'll be gone, and so will you. This is insane, Lauren shouted, pushing back from the table. You're punishing us out of spite. Not spite, Lauren, self-respect. The house is sold, the papers are signed, it's done. Arthur tried a different approach. Mom, please, we can work something out. Maybe we were too hasty. Of course this is your home. We can find a way to make it work for everyone. It's too late for that, I said quietly. The time for compromise was before you decided I was an inconvenience to be discarded. We never said that, Lauren protested. You didn't have to say it. Every rearranged room, every criticism of my habits, every whispered conversation about retirement homes said it for you. Arthur's face crumpled as the reality sank in. Where will we go with a newborn? You're both educated professionals. I'm sure you'll figure it out, I replied, serving myself another helping of potatoes. Now, who would like some more pot roast? The rest of the dinner passed in stunned silence. As I cleared the plates, I added one final detail. By the way, my flight to Monaco leaves next Thursday. I've hired a company to pack and ship my personal belongings. Feel free to use the furniture until you move. I've bought all new things for Villa Azur. As I washed dishes, I heard Lauren sobbing in the living room and Arthur trying to console her. I felt a momentary pang of guilt, but reminded myself of the months of subtle cruelty I'd endured. Sometimes, the most effective lessons are the painful ones. 2 days later, Arthur cornered me in the kitchen. Mom, please reconsider. Lauren's due in 2 months. The stress isn't good for the baby. I managed to work full-time and raise you alone while grieving your father, I reminded him. Lauren will survive finding a new apartment. We can't afford anything decent in this market, not on short notice. That sounds like a problem you created for yourselves, I replied and walked away. On the morning of my departure, Arthur finally broke down. I'm sorry, he whispered as he helped carry my luggage to the waiting car. I never should have suggested you leave. We were selfish. I looked at my son, seeing both the man who had hurt me deeply and the boy I would always love. Yes, you were. Perhaps this experience will teach you to value the people who sacrificed for you. As the driver pulled away, I watched Arthur standing in the driveway of the house that would soon belong to strangers. For the first time in months, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. At 71 years old, I was starting a new chapter. One where I would never again allow myself to be devalued by anyone, even those I loved most. 6 months later, I sat on the terrace of Villa Azur, watching yachts glide through the harbor below. My elegant 5-bedroom villa, perched on the cliffs of Monaco with panoramic Mediterranean views, had quickly become home. With marble floors, an infinity pool, and a staff of 3, it was a far cry from my Boston colonial, and exponentially more peaceful without Arthur and Lauren's constant criticism. The transition wasn't without challenges. Moving to a new country at my age required adjustments. I had to learn enough French to navigate daily life, though English was widely spoken in Monaco. The expatriate community welcomed me warmly, particularly after learning I'd purchased one of the most impressive properties in the area. You must join us for the charity gala next month. My neighbor Elise, a retired French fashion designer, insisted during our weekly coffee meetup. Your story of reinvention would inspire everyone. I'd made several close friends among Monaco's substantial American expatriate community. Dorothy had already visited twice, delighting in the guest suite with its private terrace. You should see your face, she told me during her last visit. You look 10 years younger without those two weighing you down. It was true. The Mediterranean climate eased my arthritis. Daily swims and walks along the seaside path improved my fitness. Without the constant tension of feeling unwelcome, I slept better and laughed more freely. Arthur's first email arrived 3 weeks after I left, filled with frantic updates about their housing situation. They'd been forced to rent a small 2-bedroom apartment in Somerville at nearly twice what they'd contributed to household expenses in my home. I responded with polite interest, but offered no financial assistance. His subsequent messages grew less desperate and more reflective as months passed. 4 months after my departure, a more substantive email appeared in my inbox. Mom, I owe you a real apology. What Lauren and I did was inexcusable. We took advantage of your generosity and then tried to push you out of your own home. I've had a lot of time to think about how we treated you, and I'm deeply ashamed. My behavior dishonored everything you taught me about respect and gratitude. I understand if you don't forgive me, but I needed you to know that I recognize how wrong I was. I let the message sit for several days before responding. The hurt hadn't disappeared entirely, but time and distance had softened its edges. Arthur, I appreciate your apology. What hurt most wasn't the request for me to leave, but the months of making me feel unwelcome in the home I'd worked so hard to provide for us. I hope this experience has taught you something about treating people with dignity, especially those who sacrificed for you. Your child will learn from your example, for better or worse. We began rebuilding our relationship through weekly video calls. At first, they were awkward and stilted, but gradually warmed as Arthur demonstrated genuine remorse. Lauren, humbled by their financial struggles and the realities of new parenthood, eventually joined the conversations. My granddaughter Sophia was born in December. Despite the distance, I was determined to be part of her life. I sent thoughtful gifts and had daily video calls to establish a bond. When Sophia was 4 months old, I invited them to visit Monaco. Arthur was initially hesitant, perhaps embarrassed to face me in person after everything that had happened. We can't afford flights to Europe right now, he admitted. I'll arrange everything, I offered. Consider it a gift for Sophia. When they arrived, Arthur's jaw literally dropped as the taxi approached Villa Azur. Mom, when you said villa, I was picturing something smaller. I welcomed them into the marble foyer with its sweeping staircase and crystal chandelier. Lauren, who had once dismissed my decorating tastes as outdated, stood speechless before the elegant French antiques and contemporary art in my new home. The guest suite is upstairs, I explained, leading them through the house. It has its own bathroom and a small kitchenette if you need to prepare anything for Sophia during the night. As we settled on the terrace for lunch, Arthur finally addressed the elephant in the room. I had no idea you could afford something like this, he said, gesturing to the villa and the panoramic sea view. There were many things you didn't know about me, Arthur, I replied. You stopped seeing me as a whole person with dreams and capabilities. I became just Mom, and eventually an inconvenience. He flinched at my words, but nodded. You're right. I stopped seeing you as anything other than an extension of myself and my needs. I'm trying to do better. Over the following week, we began healing the fractures in our relationship. Arthur and I had long conversations about expectations, respect, and boundaries. Lauren, chastened by our financial reversal of fortune, was more subdued than I'd ever seen her. I was horrible to you, she admitted one evening while we watched the sunset. I was so focused on what I wanted that I never considered your feelings or rights. We all make mistakes. I told her. The important thing is learning from them. As their visit drew to a close, Arthur asked the question I'd been expecting. Will you ever come back to Boston, Mom? My life is here now, I replied. But you're welcome to visit any time, and perhaps when Sophia is older, she can spend summers with her grandmother in Monaco. Standing at the airport for their departure, Arthur hugged me tightly. I'm so sorry for what we did, he whispered. Thank you for not cutting me out of your life completely. I didn't deserve a second chance. Family is complicated, I told him. But it's also precious. I won't let one terrible mistake erase a lifetime of love. As I watched their plane take off, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The pain of betrayal had led to an unexpected rebirth. By standing up for myself, I discovered strengths I never knew I possessed and created a life more fulfilling than I could have imagined. That evening, I sat on my terrace with a glass of wine, watching the Mediterranean sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. At 71, I'd learned that it's never too late to demand respect, establish boundaries, and create the life you deserve. Sometimes, the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against someone you loved? Share your story in the comments below. And if you found inspiration in my journey, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and renewal. Remember, your life is yours to shape at any age. Thank you for joining me today, and may you find the courage to honor your own worth in every relationship.